Kayla Ashfield here from Multiple Material Arts. So, honestly, last night I was sitting around with my boyfriend, and he's like, "Oh, hey, you should do a video about your background, just because people always want to know about my background. They want to go out, they want to get coffee. I don't have time to get coffee with everyone, obviously. So, here's just a little video about me, just my background. Care to watch it, care not to, up to you. I'm fine either way. But yeah, if you get something out of this video, or maybe you can relate, maybe just like it or leave me a comment, and yeah, we can chat sometime. Multiple Material Arts, and this is actually really, as weird as it sounds, it's an engineering firm, and I called it Multiple Material Arts because I thought it was like the art of creating custom solutions out of multiple materials. So those multiple materials can be anything from metals, so your aluminum, steel, mild steel, stainless steels, obviously, and then also like plastics. So I do some 3D printing. I can do ABS, ASA, PLA if you really want to. Obviously, that's kind of more of a beginner thing. And then I also have the capabilities to do a lot of resin printing. I do have a plotter printer. I don't really do much with that anymore, so I actually bought that for an old company that I used to work for, just to get the guys some large prints on the floor so they could actually see what was going on. But anyways, yes, my parents' farm, obviously, growing up. My dad was very nice, hands-on. He had us doing projects almost every summer, so it was anything from pouring cement to building a building to, obviously, the typical dehorning cattle, butchering chickens, scraping poop, I don't know, like typical dairy farm lifestyle, just instilling a very good work ethic into his kids, and then also giving them the availability to work with their grandpa too, to an extent. So my grandpa would come out and help out on the farm, so it was really like just a whole family interaction. So yeah, it was a dairy farm. If you guys really care to know, we went from, I don't know, I'm pretty proud of this because it's my dad and that was his whole life. So we went from a 52 cow tie stall barn to expanding to a whole parlor system and freestyle barn, and he actually literally like doubled his capacity for milking to, he milks 110 cows now by himself. So that was just a huge capability increase. Obviously, if you're familiar with farming, a tie stall setup is where you literally drag a cart with your milkers down the lane, and you literally have to stop at each cow and kneel down a lot of times in their stall. They are basically stall living their whole life, and then you milk them, you move on to the next. Once that one's done, basically, you have about 5 milkers that you're moving around. My dad typically did a lot of the milking, honestly, and we kind of did more of the hands-on labor of feeding the calves, scraping poop, like I said, running a few things for equipment, picking rocks. And now, instead, he is basically, so the cow's udders are now at his eye level, and he's down in a pit that is kind of into the ground, and then he's able to milk the cows right in front of him. And the cows come in from a free stall, so literally they are no longer tied to a stall. They're able to move in and out of stalls, go eat when they want, kind of have a lot better lifestyle in a barn, and come in, get milked at, he has a certain time of day because he still milks them by hand, and they'll come in, 8 in a chute on each side each time, put the 8 milkers on, go to the other side, do the same thing, obviously get them all prepped and do all that. So yeah, that was most of my life growing up, and then eventually I started getting into high school, and of course when you get into high school you start to learn, hey, what do I want to do with my life, like the real, like really what do I want to do with my life, not just, oh, I want to be a vet or something, like, I don't know, like legit, what do you actually want to do for your career for the rest of your life? And I didn't really know at first, but I think the ACT is probably what obviously placed me the most in my life, just to say, hey, what are you good at? And I know there was quite a few different things on there when I went through the ACT, but one of the biggest things that stood out to me, obviously, out of all of it, was a manufacturing engineer. Now, I wasn't really familiar with what that was, but I had watched, obviously, like a lot of hot rod shows or motorcycle building shows with my dad growing up, and so, like, I just thought an engineer was basically like, I don't know, like Aaron from Gas Monkey Garage is probably like the best example of what I could say, or like, I think it was JQ or Jim from Orange County Choppers or West Coast Choppers, one of the two. And basically that was what my idea of like an engineer was. So I don't know. I saw on the ACT that I could maybe be that, obviously a few other hands-on things, and then I was like, okay, that really stands out to me just based on other people that I've heard of, and like, I don't know. I remembered like a speaker that we listened to once that said that he was like a manufacturing engineer, and then he moved up and worked as an engineer for like a year and started his own company selling cars and basically made that his way of living and started being an entrepreneur. And of course that was like what really stood out to me. I'm like, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur someday, you know, and then maybe I could build some cool stuff along the way. You know, that'd be ideal. Kind of anyone's really dream. And so started going to school post-secondary because I knew that engineering took a lot of schooling and I wanted to get a jump start on that. So I started off and took the Accuplacer, and that kind of actually showed me a lot. So obviously the English one, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really do very good on the English one. I was pretty average, maybe even a little below average on that. And then the math one, I was actually beyond accelerated. So I got like, I don't even remember, it was like a 110 or something crazy, like a really good number on the math Accuplacer. And then I was like, oh, hey, you know, engineers are good with math, I know, so that's another good sign. So went post-secondary, skipped out on a lot of the hands-on courses that I wanted to do, like welding, automotive, machining, stuff like that, and went to school, PSEO. And when I was PSEO, I decided to focus on a lot of those math courses that were going to set me up for engineering school. And also in those math courses, I fell upon a lot of students who were going to school for drafting, so they were making like all these drawings that were like blueprints essentially for what people could build. And I was like, oh, that seems really cool. I was only two-dimensional at the time in AutoCAD and Inventor started dabbling into the 3D side, but I think I did AutoCAD first and took a course on that, then realized, hey, you know, they had the 3D Inventor one and you can 3D print in that one. That was kind of when 3D printers first started coming out, so I was like, oh, that's really awesome, let's do that. So got into that, basically just had a lot of math and all that for my post-secondary, and then getting close to graduation here, obviously you got to start figuring out where you're going to go to school. I was going to go to St. Cloud State University, and I wanted to do, they had this program where basically you could do the manufacturing engineering and you could also get your mechanical engineering degree, both one and the same, bachelor's, and I think you only had to do like 3 or 4 extra credits or classes, one of the two, to get to have both, and otherwise it was just one. So I was like, oh yeah, you know, that's gonna be perfect for me. So tried to go to school for that, and I'm not gonna lie, even though I was really good at math, calculus kind of kicked my ass. Yeah, calculus was hard. I usually was like a straight A student. Obviously that's how I could go post-secondary in 11th grade and 12th grade both, but in calculus, I think I got like a C, and I was just mad at myself that I could not get it. Like, I was kind of pissed off about that, and then also, in a lot of the classes, they just wasn't much common sense among the students there. I don't know, they just never had the hands-on background to know how things worked. So they would see stuff on the computer and be like, okay, yeah, this is a really good concept. Yeah, it's great. That was what I would think, and I'd be like, oh, how do you get a wrench in there, you know? Basically, just because my dad taught us all that. So that and just some of the things that they taught, I was like, oh, maybe engineering's just not for me, you know? I'm a farm girl. And at the time I was doing detailing, and I didn't mind detailing, honestly. I was really good at it. I really enjoyed making customers smile when they picked up their cars, and they would just light up, honestly, and be like, oh, this is amazing, you know? So I was like, oh, maybe I can do a detailing business, you know? So I finished up the semester, my first semester in engineering, and I switched over to St. Cloud Tech to go for business management. So I was going to get my business management degree and basically start my own detailing business. And honestly, I was getting close. Like, obviously I'm skipping a lot of different things, but I was getting close to graduating with that, and I was like, okay, I'm going to tell my dad what I want to do. So I told my dad what I was going to do, and I was going to start this detail shop, you know, and it was going to be really cool. And he kind of told me, he's like, well, that's kind of a silly idea. And at the time, I was crushed. Like, I was pretty like, what the hell, Dad? Like, this is what I want to do, you know? But really, I think what my dad knew that I didn't is he knew from being a farmer that if I started a detailing business, I'd probably end up doing most of the work myself. Even if I hired a team, eventually that team is going to move on and you're going to have to do it yourself. So honestly, just being kind of mad, I was just like, oh, if my dad doesn't want me to do that, maybe I can take this opportunity to get into something hands-on again like I always wanted to, you know? And so I decided to take a few hands-on courses. I took like an intro to welding course. This was like my last semester. I only had one business class left. And I was like, oh, I got time to do other classes, so I'll just experiment. So I did an intro to welding course. I did a machining course. I did physics or something because I was like, oh, maybe engineering again. And I think I did an accounting course because my accounting teacher, when I went for business management, was like, oh, you should be an accountant. You're really good at math. And I liked the idea, but I was like, no, the idea of sitting behind a desk the rest of my life, not really to me. But to each their own. I don't mind some sitting behind the desk, just not all the time. So anyways, did those classes, and the one that really stuck out or stuck with me was actually the welding course. And the reason why is because it really got me back into the idea and thinking of this is why I wanted to get into like engineering in the first place, is because I thought it was all this custom fabrication stuff, and then there was actually a robotic welder, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is like mechanical, like all the inventor stuff that we did. We made like a bottle jack in there, so I was like, oh yeah, this is like that level of, hey, maybe I could make welding machines or robotic welding or whatever, you know. So I decided actually to take the welding diploma or welding degree there at St. Cloud Tech, and I loved it. I'll admit, at the time, I never even really thought of this just because I grew up on the farm with my dad. Like, I was the only girl in the program at the time. I think there was like one girl per semester. It was kind of like a typical thing for that time. If there was even one girl per semester at that time. This was around 2016, 2017. So, yeah, anyways, doesn't really matter. But I know even going to Alec Tech, when I said I wanted to be a manufacturing engineer, everyone's like, oh, a girl in manufacturing, you know, that's weird. Like, small town girl, never had that mindset. Every time I was just like, no, I've heard of other women doing that kind of shit. Like, I've heard of women in trucking. I've heard of women in farming. We always grew up doing something like, who cares? I don't think of that. I don't think of it as my minority, or like, I don't know. I still really don't. It's like, you gotta do what's gonna make you happy at the end of the day. But anyways, so went to school for welding, and a little fun fact is actually my final project for the welding program, I 2D modeled, because we had like some CAD class in that as well, and I don't even know why I had to take it with all the CAD I had already done, but you had to have it for this diploma, so I took it, and I actually designed a pit bike frame for up at the Brainerd track here in Minnesota, because I was like, oh, I just want a little pit bike that I can go around on, and this is why I wanted to go into engineering and everything, is because I wanted to build custom motorcycles or something along those lines, you know? Really just right up my alley. So that was my final project. I stayed late all the time, and basically I fell in love with TIG welding. TIG welding was the best, or like oxyacetylene. I don't know why. It's just like you're actually doing something, you're using both hands. Beads are just beautiful. You can control it. Everything about TIG was just awesome to me. So then I was like, okay, well, getting close to the end of this program. I think I had like 6 months left of that. And I was like, okay, well then I want to work at a company that does TIG welding. So there was a company in St. Cloud, and they had TIG welders on stainless steel pressure vessels. And so I went over to their facility and started welding there part-time, very part-time, only a couple days a week. And then I was also doing detailing still a few days a week, and I was going to school, just finishing up the program. So got towards the end of the program to graduation, and I was like, all right, now I'm going to do welding full-time. And also one of my welding instructors was like, hey, you know, you wanted to do engineering too. Maybe you should try out this 2+2 program. So you already got the welding diploma. Bemidji State University has this 2+2 program, and I did kind of remember it from when I went to Alec Tech, them just mentioning it there, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I can work full-time as a welder, and I can go to school for engineering now. So did that, was working night shift. I'll admit my brain was just foggy. My brain just hurt by the time I started going to school full-time and doing engineering full-time. And Also, upon working there towards the end, one of my colleagues from school got in a really bad accident at work. Essentially, he was rolling something and his hand got sucked in because his glove was probably a little too big for his hands. He was a pretty small guy like me. Hand got sucked in with a glove, and basically the best situation for them was to amputate his hand instead of him keeping it just for infection cases, all of that. And I was pretty devastated by that, honestly. He was seriously, like, I'm not even exaggerating. I hope he kind of sees this, because he was seriously one of the most passionate, motivated people in the world. And he was the best TIG welder I'd ever seen. Like, the man, he's so good, he's still TIG welding. He's still doing everything with a prosthetic hand. Like, that's how badass that person is. Like, you want to see a badass, go check him out sometime. But I wish I could mention his name, but I don't really want to call him out. But yeah, he was amazing. It's like someone who can lose something that's literally life-changing and still go on. That is incredible. But that whole situation just made me mad, and I was like, all right, I gotta get out of here. Like, I just gotta get out of here. This changed his life. I can't stay here. I don't want something like that to happen to me. So I decided, I was like, okay, I'm gonna kind of start looking for a job, but also at the same time, in my engineering program, I was taking a lean course, and when you're doing lean, you have to do a lot of, like, production flow, following the floor plans, how things go through the floor, stuff like that. And so one of our projects was to go visit manufacturing facilities and see or map out what their floor plan was. So I did that to a few small town other companies, and one company in particular, I went in there and wasn't trying to get an interview or anything, but towards the end they actually offered me a job, and it was full-time, it was on day shift, kind of checked all the boxes really. I mean, it wasn't necessarily TIG welding, but I was like, okay, I'm going to make the move because they're giving me a pretty good offer, and my head hurts so bad in this whole situation. I'm just done with working there. So, moved on to the next place, going to school full-time, welding full-time, and eventually was getting towards the end of that degree again, and I don't know, I guess if you really want to know, it was another pressure vessel place actually in St. Cloud. I kind of forgot to mention this. I actually told myself I would never go to this manufacturing facility. That's what I was going to tell you. I was never going to go to this manufacturing facility because I knew that they laid people off. But because of my whole situation, not really thinking straight even, I was like, all right, I just gotta go there. And I'm not going to make this like a lifetime job. And I'm just going to go there and I'm going to weld there, and then I'm going to move on once I get my engineering degree. But of course, life changes. You kind of get sucked into feeling like a family, you know, with people that you work with. So, of course, I was working there, and I was like, oh, hey, you know, getting towards the end of this degree. And basically went into the president's office, and I was like, all right, so here's the ultimatum. You guys can either start getting me into manufacturing engineering because I'm going to be coming up on my degree here, or I'm going to go find somewhere else to work. And so they worked really well with me. They allowed me to work part-time as a welder, part-time as an engineer, just to get my feet wet to see if I'd even like it, and still go to school full-time. So it was a really awesome experience, actually. And then I got towards the end of the degree, and I basically, again, I kind of went up to him and I was like, hey, I do enjoy this engineering thing, although it's very different than what I thought I would be doing. I do enjoy this a lot, so I want to do engineering here full time. You're going to give me a position, otherwise I'm going to go somewhere else. And so they did. Probably not really making what engineers really make, but I just like the fact that you could wear so many hats. So they're a manufacturing engineer. Basically, you got to do blueprints for the floor, you got to quote different projects out, you got to kind of work with the customer when you quote out those projects and do project planning, project management, get together like all the pre-production meetings basically, so you meet with the floor, get a plan of workflow. Hey, you guys are going to do this, you're going to do that, this has to happen before that, just to get the guys a little heads up. We also entered a lot of stuff into the ERP system to make routers, work orders, stuff like that, built bombs, and obviously got that kind of quoted and ordered and everything. So worked with estimating there, and even the gals down in the materials area. But yeah, anyways, so worked as the manufacturing engineer there for a while, and all of a sudden my engineering lead, he was getting pretty close to retiring. I think he only had about a year left, and then he was going to retire. And so upper management started talking around, and all of a sudden they came to me and they decided, hey, Michaela, you could be the next engineering manager. This would be a great opportunity for you. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of started thinking, like, I'd never thought this way in my life, obviously, until this point. And then all of a sudden I started getting that little voice in my head of, like, everyone was telling me, oh, Michaela can't do that. She's a little 24-year-old girl in a man's world manufacturing, and she's got all these 50-year-old guys that she's going to have to look out and delegate to, or even these guys that are older than her in their 30s, and have to delegate to. Like, these guys aren't going to take me seriously, Like, that's just what was going through my mind. So, like, the president came up to me, and I turned down the position, I think, 4 times. And on the 4th time that I turned it down, he kind of, like, he seriously looked at me. He's like, I really think this is a great opportunity for you to grow. So what will it take for you to want to do this position? And so basically, I just kind of told him, I was like, hey, here's what it would take. I'm not going to lie, I gave him a certain dollar amount. It wasn't even what manufacturing engineers were making still. Like, I still was not even to that level. And I was like, hey, this seems like a good number to me, So maybe if you can squeeze something like that, maybe I'll feel like I have the value or the worth to do that. And so a couple hours later, he came up to me with a sticky note of all things, and it said something cheesy like, we can make that work. And instead of being, like, happy about it, I actually started crying. Like, because I was like, oh shit, I didn't even give him a high enough number, like, fuck. I didn't really want this, so I actually kind of started crying. And then got my shit back together and went back to work, and then all of a sudden they were saying, like, hey, we're going to do an ERP system update. So we made a whole ERP system update, and I'm not going to lie, the entire time we did it, I was like, this doesn't feel right for a job shop. Like, what we were doing in our old system was a lot easier, took a lot less time. Like, I get how this ERP system works. It was a weird thing. So once you get into manufacturing, you kind of realize that there's job shops and there are people who are manufacturers that have a product line. 2 slightly different fields. So job shop, you have custom orders coming in all the time from different people. They basically say, hey, here's what I want. I just don't know how to make it. Come up with that. That's what we were. A production shop basically has, all right, here's the product that we need to make. And then the engineers do make the blueprints and stuff for that, but then a lot of their job after that as manufacturing engineers is how can we perfect the process to make this part as quickly and efficiently as possible. Yes, we did that a little bit here in the job shop, but not to the extent that they would in a production shop, because it's like, okay, we have certain things that we build, that we bring to market, that this is what we have. System update. The whole time it just didn't feel right, because it was like, okay, we're trying to cram a job shop system into a system that seems built for production shops. And that, in a nutshell, is what we were trying to do. So we were making a lot more work for ourselves. We would have to enter in every little piece part, things like that. There was like, I mean, it would probably be good for a production line shop, but like, there was a router for almost every single piece part. Yeah, you could batch them together if you had like 100 of them, but like, there was a router for just plasma cutting a part and then sending it off to blast and then sending it to welding. Like, it didn't make any sense. There was way too much paperwork for what we were doing, and I'll admit, part of it probably was the fact that I didn't know exactly what to say to this ERP system company. I wish I had some of the experience that's another thing I didn't mention. So my engineering manager that left and my engineering lead, he had about 30 years of experience in welding, and then never had a formal degree in engineering, but worked his way up to be an engineer. And did that by like going to school part-time, I know, for some manufacturing classes, stuff like that. But never really actually had a formal engineering degree. And he was the best engineer in the world. I'm not even exaggerating. He was the best engineer in the world. No formal education on it really, besides a few classes here and there, night courses after work that he was just doing to like get himself ahead in life and make more money probably, And also probably to ease on his body. I'm sure 30 years of welding, your body's going to take a serious toll on itself. I can tell you that just from my short experience in welding. But anyways, he was like the best engineer, had big shoes to fill, and I maybe didn't have the experience that he did to be able to say, hey, this is what we need to do to our system to make it work. I mean, I would show them, I'd be like, hey, you know, anything else that we do the plasma cutting for, we can put all the plasma cut parts on only one router. You cut them all at once, you send them all off in one little batch shipment, and then, like, it's good, you know? It's not, all right, cut part A, B, C, D, and then finally put them on a pallet later after it gets out of blast for the guys to weld on the floor. Like, I mentioned that, too. The only real difference between what I was doing as a manufacturing engineer and what happened as an engineering manager, and this is still missing out on a lot of things in the whole story, is, like, I just had to manage people. I had to do more delegating. I had to kind of be a leader. I had to do a lot of employee reviews. I did a lot of training for people that were in my team and also outside of my team, including when we did do this ERP system update, our CFO didn't even want to train the floor. They were like, oh yeah, you know, they'll figure it out, you know. And so I went through and I actually, being someone from the floor, is like, no, they're not going to figure it out. I'm sorry, but like, you can just throw this out there and then you're going to piss off a whole company. So I was like, okay, I'm going to train every department and we're going to get this right. And so I did that for everyone on the floor just because it's like, came from the floor. I know what it's like. Obviously got a lot of feedback that was similar to what I was thinking, like, hey, this system is kind of not for us. And whatever, did the training anyways. Yeah, so I had to do just a lot of delegating, management, stuff like that. And one thing that I always failed on as manager is I probably didn't delegate enough because I never wanted to overload my guys. I was fine being overloaded myself, but overloading them just felt kind of out of place or not right. Just because, yeah, it just didn't feel right to me, you know? No one should be overworked. And we had a lot of workload for a small engineering team at times, and especially a revolving engineering team was another thing. So I think when I took over, we had 5 engineers, maybe 6, and then as soon as my lead retired, 2 or 3 of those guys just decided, hey, we're going to go somewhere else too. Kind of like that whole idea. So yeah, I kind of started off with like a fresh team, and then yeah, you'd cycle through them. Anyways, on a tangent again. And had to manage them. And kind of about a year into that engineering management position, I actually decided to start multiple material arts part-time. And because honestly, as weird as it sounds, it's like, okay, I'm making custom solutions for my friends, car parts, stuff, you know, like that. And this way I can kind of write it off, put it all into a business, be legit, start my entrepreneurial side gig here. At the time of doing that, I also made, like, every year for Christmas, ever since I went to school for welding, I'd make Christmas presents for all of my family and friends, just because, you know, it's really cool to make something unique that you can't get in the store. And when it's made out of metal, it's built to last, and it'll last forever. So I made, like, a lot of tinky ornaments, stuff like that. And I don't know, I think I seen like Barbie the Welder or something finally by that point in time too, and seen that she was doing art shows. I'd taken a Ken's Custom Iron course, I think, earlier in the year, so that was like blacksmithing courses. We learned how to make a knife, stuff like that, and I just saw a lot of his articles actually, and I was like, okay, because they're all hanging on the wall in his shop, thanks to Mary Lou. They're all framed up there, and I was like, dang, you know, that's awesome. Like, his whole story was he got laid off from the railroad, and then he started his own business, and he started going around to craft fairs about things. So I was kind of like, oh, you know, that'll really get me the get-go, you know, so I can do a few craft shows, you know, not knowing anything about them. And start my side business, multiple material arts, again, trying to make custom solutions on custom art just to have fun and do something outside of my position. And then all of a sudden, like, it got to a point where someone who worked with me on the floor actually at that company was like, hey, you know, I know you always kind of wanted to, like, get into making, like, automotive or, like, power sports or something like that parts. You have 3D printers now, you can do all that sort of stuff, but one of the 3D printers that you're missing is a resin printer, and I have a guy who's into custom vintage snowmobiles, and he would love some parts that are resin printed quality because he had someone else try it out or something, and he's like, I know you can do this better than him, basically trying to, like, knock me up, because he was just an awesome guy. He trained me on the floor, and then coincidentally, towards the end of me being an engineering manager there too, I actually trained him in as a engineer. So yeah, it was kind of a nice change of pace. Always a great guy. Got me hooked up with someone making vintage snowmobile parts, and then all of a sudden I kind of started finding myself like, I guess, getting sort of burnt out. So I'd always worked about 60 hours a week at my day job, and I'd go home at night and clean, cook if I had the time, or obviously I'd grab something instead. And then come home, work on some customer projects, and then a lot of times I actually got to a point where I was taking customer prints off at night when I got home from work, and then I was also starting them in the morning before I went to work. And at some point in time, I started having like a late streak towards the end of my engineering management position, and it was probably, I'd say it was probably a good 3 to 6 month period. I don't know for sure how long it was, but I know I was slacking as an engineering manager. Although I will admit, no matter what, I was always thinking about work outside of work, even if I was taking prints off or putting them on for me. You'd go on vacation, and like, no vacation was relaxing to me. Honestly, I don't even think I slept half the time. I'd just be up and I'd be thinking like, hey, I gotta get this stuff done at work. I gotta delegate. I gotta do this. I gotta do that at work. And then also in the back of my mind is I gotta keep my customers happy on my personal business. Fucking, I don't know. Just a lot of brain scatter, a lot of not sleeping, a lot of being overstressed. And like, I remember being on vacation a few times, and even when my boyfriend was helping out with Formula Drift for someone, I would just be sitting there lying awake at night. Even at Formula Drift, you'd get like maybe 3 hours of sleep or whatever, you know, in between events, and I'd still be sitting there lying awake at night thinking about all this shit I had to do, like, for no good reason. It's like, why even think about this when you're not even close to anywhere near that? But anyways, so yeah, I just started getting kind of really burnt out, I guess, on the whole thing. I know towards the beginning of that year when I got laid off, my grandma had passed away, and she had Alzheimer's, and I know that the day she passed away, I know that they told me to come visit her. I said no because I wanted to go to work, and then, I don't know, I guess there's just something in the back of my mind like, oh, you know, grandma's just going to come through because she's come through, you know, every other time that they say that she's going to pass away here at that time. And I think that's probably the thing that struck me the most is I did not skip work, and my grandma ended up passing away. And then I think I really just got completely, like, burnt after that. And so I started coming in late because I was taking off customer prints, like I said, not being a good manager. I will admit, my lead, he pulled me in his office a few times, and he's like, hey, you know, if you don't step up on coming in on time, something's probably going to happen to you, you know? And didn't really expect it because I still worked really hard, just usually late, and then I'd come in a little late because I'd stay till like, I'd come in at like 8:30, and I'd stay till like 8-9 o'clock at night. I'm not even exaggerating, like, it was just ridiculous. Almost every night. I come in Saturdays and Sundays. Anyways, so like, that just kind of really chapped me. I'm like, I literally didn't go see my grandma, and she died, and yeah. So that just changed everything there. And then I started focusing more on me. Eventually, I actually didn't even expect it. So I hadn't even gotten a warning or anything that the company was doing bad financially, really. I mean, like, maybe towards the time when my grandma passed, about 6 months prior to me getting laid off, I was told, like, hey, you know, the company's doing bad. Kind of thought that we had come out of that somehow because we were getting quite a few projects in. And all of a sudden, I came into work one Thursday. I'd kind of heard something weird the night before, but I came into work one Thursday. I think I came in at like 8:15 too, because I started the laundry before I came in. Just was not having them at the state of mind like I should have. And came into work, and all of a sudden, all the big managers of the company are standing in the HR office, and they're like, hey, Michaela, we gotta talk to you. And mean to you, there's someone from my team out in his car, an engineer, and it was someone that they didn't really care for, but at the same time, he was someone that I really never could do anything to because he never did anything wrong, and he always got the tasks done on time that I would give to him. So I was like, I can't do anything with this guy, you know? And went in there, and I figured they were going to tell me that they fired him or something, you know? Maybe they found some magical way to fire him. And instead, what they told me is, Michaela, you're getting laid off. And, like, that just struck me like $1,000,000, and I just started bawling again, you know, basically like when I got hired on for the position, because, again, I never wanted to come to this place because I knew people got laid off, like I had started. And I never wanted to get trapped in that, but then I did. And I just started bawling, and the first thing that came out of my mouth, instead of like, should I get my stuff, or like, I don't know, like something normal, I guess, I was like, do you guys want me to go finish the project upstairs that I was working on? So can we have that done before I leave? Because they told me that the reason I got laid off was a financial difficulty. And so, of course, the farm hard-working kid in me was like, oh, hey, let me help you at least get this project done then so you can make some money when I'm out of here. And, yeah, so I got laid off. I'll admit, I wasn't really professional about that either. After bawling, I pretty much tore anything personal off the walls. I was kind of mad at myself. I was kind of beating myself up, I guess, at that point, and like just tearing everything off the walls, putting it in this box that they shoved in my face when I started crying, saying I wanted to finish the project. They were just like, hey, nope, here's a box. You gotta go get all your stuff and get out of here. So couldn't say bye to anyone. Did like this whole walk of shame. It felt like going to get all my stuff. Just felt like I got fired, honestly, and just took it very personally, which I should not have. And so, like, I'll admit, I went and did an interview, I think, the next day or the next week after it happened, to try and get back on the right track. And, like, every single interview that I went to, I would just start bawling when I talk about the experience. I don't know what happened. And, like, I just kept beating myself up inside, and I was like, I'm not good enough for manufacturing, Everyone was right. A girl's not fit for this, just all the negative things that no one should ever really say to themselves was going through my mind. And then, I don't know, I think I went to a couple weeks of these different interviews. People would either offer me a position, and I didn't feel like it was good enough to give my life up for again because of what happened with my grandma situation, or because, like, I don't know, something like that happens and you realize money's not everything, right? So they'd offer me these things and I'd be like, no, it's not really worth it, I guess, for me. I'd rather focus on my family. And basically I started doing craft shows because I was just like, what? Ken kind of went back to the whole Ken thing. Like, Ken got laid off. That's how he got his come up, and then eventually he had a shop and all this stuff, obviously. And then I signed up for so many craft shows. I think I had one almost every week the first year I did them. And what year was that? 2023? The end of 2023. So, yeah, we just came up on 2 years here. But yeah, so I did a year of craft shows just full out. And I would just go to them, and I'm not going to lie, I didn't make any money. Like, no money, probably had my prices too high, whatever, but I just knew from being in manufacturing, like, hey, welders should be making good money because they have a lot of skills, And I would actually go put my pricing for, like, what you could make an hour welding, like $20 an hour maybe, if that. And, like, no one would buy any of my stuff. And I'm like, man, this really sucks. Like, and then didn't really make any money doing that. Finally figured out from someone about, like, networking groups. Obviously, when I was doing the custom art, I was still doing all the custom solutions that I could, still doing a lot of 3D designs. I had a 3D scanner at that point in time and was doing things with that, doing a lot of reverse engineering. That's kind of how I came up with all those snowmobile parts. And then I just was like, okay, well, I can do all these custom solutions and this art. That wasn't working. Someone told me, one of my customers actually that needed a custom solution told me, he's like, hey, are you part of a networking group? And I was like, what's a networking group? Like, I've had a business consultant and I've never heard anything about a networking group. And he's like, oh, well, I know this really cool group of people. You should go check them out. Basically what a networking group is, it's a group of people that gets together and they want to help you grow your business. And I'm like, oh, wow, that sounds like something I needed when I got laid off, So I went and checked that out and found a really good group of people. And through that, I got the confidence that I could be an engineering consultant. And so now I've actually expanded from just making custom solutions to also engineering consulting. And really, I think this is probably where I just need to end this video. It's gotten probably way too long. Way too much of a background on me, probably. But I just really wanted to give people an insight of where I came from, what I went through. Maybe it'll just reach someone else who has been through something similar. Like, I just want to let you know, hey, if you get laid off ever and you're kind of entrepreneurial and you want to start your own thing, join a networking group. And I'm not talking necessarily like Chamber of Commerce. Like, join a networking group that's like 20 people, not necessarily a BNI, maybe someone who knocked off a BNI and started a networking group. BNI is like Business Networking International. You don't have to pay for something that high level. I pay $250. I get 20 people who are amazing, and I've literally more than 10, probably over 100 times my investment in that. So I'd say it's a very good opportunity, and we're going to cut this video off here. Don't beat yourself up if you ever get laid off. It happens to good people or bad people, and like my HR lady said, even though I didn't really listen to it at the time, it's hard for management to lay off someone who's a good worker too. And that's why I think they labeled it as a financial distrain, got rid of me and 10 other people, was to kind of make me feel like it wasn't myself, and I still blamed myself anyways. Because I don't think it was me. I think it probably was financing. Honestly, we didn't have a crazy amount of jobs, but I didn't think we were where we were 6 months prior. So it's just in the company's best interest to get rid of me and those 10 people, and I see it as that now. And I just hope taking the time to talk about this whole entire experience just maybe reaches someone else to say, hey, you know what? You are good enough. You can do your own thing. You can even go get another job in the same field, or even a whole different field. Whatever makes you happy, go do that. Go do that and find your purpose in life. Find what you were made to be here for, because I know I was made for all of these things, welding, manufacturing, whatever, that people outside of my family would say is not normal for a girl. I think it's just normal for anyone to do whatever makes them happy. If you want to be a man who gets into something girly, like maybe you want to sew or do nursing or whatever, I don't care. Do what makes you happy. At the end of the day, that's really what I kind of wanted to make this whole background video about myself for, was to A, not have to get coffee with every single person who wants to know something about me, and B, to tell someone else in the world that, hey, go pursue your purpose, do what makes you happy, and don't ever let anyone get you down. So if you got anything out of this video, please like and maybe even subscribe to see something more in the future. And I'll do a whole separate video about just my new business, Multiple Material Arts, and how that has evolved for me. Thanks for watching. See you next time.